this morning comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 7, verses 24 through 27. Jesus is concluding his Sermon on the Mount with these words. Everyone who hears then these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on a rock. The rain fell, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on the house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act upon them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell, and great was its fall. May God add his blessing to the reading of his word. This summer we were blessed, my family and I, to spend a few days in Red River, New Mexico with the Elliots and other members of the Cook family. We had a nice family reunion there. Red River is a ski community, and right now they're swishing down the slopes. During the summer, however, it's wonderful for hiking and fishing and other things. But one thing they do in most fishing communities, or most skiing communities, is they'll keep the lift open during the summer. So that's one thing that we did while we were there. We went up the ski lift to the top of the mountain where they had the restaurant open, walked around a little bit, had a Coke, and came on down. Now, I was looking forward to that. My kids had never been on a ski lift before, and what an interesting experience that is. If you've never done that, just sort of sitting on a chair 50 or 60 feet above the ground. And nothing holding you in. There's no seat belts there, no safety bars on this particular lift. It can be a little disconcerting, but I have been up on many lifts before, and I was used to it. I was a little worried about my son who was next to me, so I kept my arm around him, holding on to him, and he seemed fine. He wasn't worried about it. When we got to the top and we had our nice time, we were heading back down, and I suddenly realized, I had been up a chairlift hundreds of times, but I had never ridden down a chairlift. This will be interesting. This will be different. And sure enough, it was different. Because instead of, as you're riding up the chairlift, you see the mountain right in front of you. You see the trees and the ground as you're going up the mountain. When you are turned around, I discovered, you look out and see nothing. It is sky, it is mountains, it's a beautiful view, but then your feet are dangling down, and you look down the mountain, down the chairlift, and way down there is the bottom. I panicked. I was so nervous. I was so scared as we were sitting in that chairlift and trying not to show it as my son was still next to me. But there was just something about that moment. I felt so insecure hanging there. Facing the mountain, I felt that security. It was very familiar to me. But turning around, I felt so insecure. And I knew there was nothing I could do but wait it out. The chairlift would take 25 minutes, just as it had taken 25 minutes to get us to the top of the mountain. I just had to sit and wait. I said a little prayer. I closed my eyes a little bit. I was hanging on as we went up the mountain. I was hanging on to my son to make him feel better. As I was going down, I was hanging on to him to make me feel better. But I wanted down. I did not feel secure. I did not feel safe. I was worried. I was scared. I was nervous. And what a great difference there is in feeling secure and in feeling insecure. What a difference it makes in our lives when we came on and live through our lives and feel secure in what we are doing, to feel secure in the way our lives are unfolding. Or on the other hand, to always have that feeling of insecurity, that feeling of fear. Well, that's just what Jesus was talking about in his summation of his Sermon on the Mount today. The feeling of security versus the feeling of insecurity. And he uses one of the great metaphors for security. One of the great symbols is our homes. A home, our house, our apartment, the place where we live. It should be a place where we feel secure. Where we can go to sleep at night, feel safe, and feel sheltered. Think about the extremes he uses. The man who built his house on the rock. To have a home that was secure. Now imagine being in the place of the person, the man who had built his house on the sand. Going to bed every night worried. Waking up every morning worried. Leaving your home and being worried. Hearing the rain falling, as many of us did this morning as we woke, and feeling worried. Feeling afraid. Feeling far from being secure. Well, we are blessed that the good news of the gospel is that Jesus Christ saves us from this kind of insecurity. Jesus Christ can save us from fear if we choose to accept that help and that salvation. It's true in the long term, and it is one of the great messages of the gospel. We will be taken care of. Whether our lives are long or they are short, we will be taken care of. We are saved from the two great worries of human life. The two things that keep us from God or have kept us from God. We are saved from sin through Jesus Christ. And we are saved from death. Right away then, as we become followers of Christ, these two worries can drop away from us. Two things that we no longer have to feel insecure about. And what a blessing that is. But you know, it's just the beginning. This strong belief that we can have in God, in Jesus Christ, in the good news, all of that can knock away so many of the worries of life, but there is more. More that we need to do to let go of those insecurities that can plague us every day. For it isn't enough simply to believe. It is another great message of the gospel that if we want to truly embrace all that Christ has to offer, including this great sense of security, of having our lives built on a firm foundation, of not having to live in fear each and every day, it is not enough simply to believe. Just as for the student, it's not enough simply to believe in the importance of an education. The student has to work toward that education, has to grab onto that knowledge and to do the work necessary to gain it. It's not enough to believe it is important to provide for ourselves and for our families. We have to do the hard work of providing for ourselves and our families. It's not enough to believe that an honorable life is important. It's easy to believe that living honorably is important. But that's not enough. We have to make the sacrifices. We have to make the decisions that lead us to an honorable life. And certainly that is one thing that Jesus is pointing to today. Do you want to grab onto all that I have to offer you? Do you want to grab onto an abundant life? A life that is secure. A life where fear has its place, yes. But then it can be discarded once it has served its purpose in our lives. That's what Jesus Christ offers us. But again, it's not enough to believe that. It is what we do. And in fact, it's what Jesus says at the beginning of this little parable about the wise and foolish builders. He says, everyone who hears these words and acts upon them. Not everyone who hears these words and believes them, but everyone who hears them believes them enough to act upon them. It's like James wrote, faith without works is dead. Faith is important. Believing is the first step, absolutely. But then we have to get busy. And if we find ourselves in our lives feeling insecure, feeling troubled, feeling afraid, if fear is a factor for us each and every day, then believing is the first step, but then doing is the next step. Getting busy and doing. In Matthew 25, Jesus talks about the final judgment of the world and the separation of the people as he's judging them into the sheep and the goats, those who are on his right hand and then those who are dismissed from him. And what does it say? It says that Jesus does not say it is what you believe, it is rather what you do. I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was in prison, and you visited me. That's what leads to the life of abundance. That's what ultimately leads to salvation. And that's what leads to us being able to live the kind of life that Christ is calling us to every day. Sure, there are times in our lives when we face fears and we face anxieties. And you know, fear and anxiety, they were given to us by God. They were gifts to us to help us survive in this turbulent world. It is okay to be scared. It is okay to be anxious. But Christ warns us of the spiritual danger of letting those things take over our lives. Or even one whole day of our lives, or even one whole week. Being able to follow our fears. Do what our fears are telling us to do instead of doing what God is telling us to do. Remember, these words of Jesus, this parable of the wise and foolish builder, are the last words, the summation of a long sermon. One of the longest discourses in the gospel. Jesus, we call it the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus is saying, do these things that I have told you. And there in the Sermon on the Mount, we hear about prayer and its importance to making us feel connected to God, helping us to put all our anxieties and fears into perspective. The importance of stewardship, of giving to others, and realizing that others have needs as well. Others have fears and anxieties. The importance of loving our enemies. The importance of letting our light shine out into the world. The importance of not being judgmental toward others. Not judging those around us. Do these things, and you will be as the wise man who built his house on a rock. And the foundation of your life will be strong. And you can have confidence in your faith. And that faith is built up by what we do. What we do each and every day. What then is in front of us in this week ahead? What is ahead of us? How can we walk more closely on this path that God would have us walk? Yes, we should give. Yes, we should serve. Do all of these things that Christ is calling us to do. Well, I'm glad to report that that chairlift finally made it to the ground. And I stepped off. And the relief was immediate. To go from being suspended in the air to being on firm footing once again. If you look back in your memories, I'm sure you remember some time where you felt as vulnerable, as scared, as insecure, and then in that next moment when that problem was taken away, the relief and the joy of setting your feet back on firm ground. Knowing that that thing had been taken care of, that it was now behind you. And that is what Christ offers us. Every day, this ability to know and to believe that our lives have been built on a firm foundation. And yes, the fears and the worries will come into our lives, and we will process them, and we will use them, and then we will set them aside. We will move forward with our lives. And we will be like the wise man who built his house on the rock. And the floods will come. And the winds will blow. But we will be secure. With the love of God and the love of Jesus Christ in our hearts. And that I say, praise be to God. And amen. Let us bow in prayer.